For the following weeks, Monica kept losing weight, more and more weight. Brian would beg his wife to eat, but she would say that she couldn't. Brian would sometimes cry where no one could see him. He felt helpless. He was in a fight with an enemy he couldn't see. Finally, one day, he was coming home from work. He called his home to find out how his wife was, and they told him that they had checked her into a clinic because she had stopped eating completely and she was very weak. At that instant, Brian almost went crazy, started crying again, and in that moment, he remembered that many years ago he had met through his best friend a man that looked and acted like a common low-life criminal. He was never friends with this character, but he knew him well enough because they had met a few times in the past because of his best friend. This character, who we're going to call Robert, or Dick for short, had disappeared for a number of years. Turns out he had gone to Cuba to become a santero. Now, let me give you a little lesson on what a santero is. Santero is like a witch doctor. Dick had gone to Cuba to become one. Now, santeros practice what is called santeria, and they work with a lot of different spirits, according to Dick, for bad things and for good things. That would depend on what the customer wants. Now, let me tell you, a real santero is a very dangerous and powerful witch doctor, not someone you want to piss off and make an enemy. Brian didn't know where Dick lived, so he called his best friend, who knew him better and would know where to find him. So Brian's friend told him where he was living at. Brian went to find Dick. Sure enough, he was there. Now, back then, Brian didn't know how legit Dick was. So when he got there, he said, "Hey, what's up? How you doing?" The typical things you would say to someone you haven't seen in a long time. Brian didn't want Dick to know that he was there for his wife. He wanted to see if Dick and his santeria was for real. So when Brian got there, Dick was preparing one of his spells or whatever you call it. Now, anybody that went to see Dick would call him Padrino, which means Godfather in English, and would talk to him with the utmost respect, borderline fear. But Brian wasn't having any of it. Brian had met him when he was just a low-life bum, so he would talk to him like he did back when they met. And Dick, you could tell, kind of like that anyways. So after catching up, Dick asked Brian what he was doing in his life, and Brian answered, almost challenging Dick, saying, "Well, you tell me what I'm here for." Now, Dick was a coke addict and who knows what other drugs, but he had gotten so bad that when Brian went to see him, Dick had been clean for a couple of months. Brian asked why he had stopped, and he kind of referred to the fact that he had gotten really bad. Now, if you knew Dick, for him to say that he got really bad, well, that's saying a lot. So Brian and Dick went inside the apartment, and that's when Dick took out some seashells on a plate, and Dick started his reading. And that's when things got really weird.